Hello and welcome to Making Factual Funny. We've been told to make this an entertaining session, which of course is the kiss of death on any session, but we will give it a go. Before we start, I'm going to show a little show reel of our sponsors of this session, which is Sky, of their recent and upcoming and latest factual output. So let's have a little look at the Sky factual show reel. There you go. So, making factual funny. So on the table with me today is, and I say this because I'm a program maker and she's a commissioning editor, but the truly brilliant Celia Taylor. No, really you are. Mike Riley, who has worked with us on Hotel Secrets at Burning Bright. I'm managing director of Burning Bright, and has recently for Seven Wonder, has just come back from France yesterday, making a documentary for Celia with Mickey Flanagan, trying to cycle around France. And I'm also joined by Sky One's newest stars, which is Baz and his mum Nancy. We've just made a series with them. We've just finished, which is called 50 Ways to Kill Your Mammy, and as you can see, Nancy is still alive, and we've just come back. We were before we set off, we said, we pitched the show, and we'll tell you more about it later. But it was called 50 Ways to Kill Your Mammy, and then Sky, being Sky, said, when you're filming it, can you call it 50 Ways to Test Your Mammy? And I said, but To Kill Your Mammy is much better title. He went, yeah, but what if she dies when you're making it? It'll be terrible publicity.
Nancy, close your ears.
Very confidence inspiring from my mother, isn't it?
Anyway, we didn't kill her. So, we are going to discuss making factual funny. Now, obviously, there's been funny factual around for years. Michael Palin, Louis Theroux. We just recently did
mildly amusing, I'd say.
Mildly amusing. But we recently did a series at Burning Bright with Billy Connolly on death, which Mike directed and my colleague Nikki series produced. And it is definitely one of the most, it's difficult, but also the most exciting things to do, which is if you can make funny, factual, interesting programs, it reaches a huge audience, and it just gets an audience that wouldn't necessarily watch a show on death or whatever. So we are going to try and analyse what makes funny factual. And Celia and her team at Sky are actually now, when you go to pitch them, are actually commissioning shows that not funny things happen along the way, which, as we can see in that show reel before, nothing is funnier than a man falling over. But obviously, you can't produce that. But now we are setting out to make programmes, and they've got a sort of little sub-genre going on, which is actually to make a kind of type of show that actually sets out to be comedic from its outset. And so we thought we'd analyse how you do that and if that's possible. I sort of fell upon it many years ago. I was producing Ruby Wax, and we did a talk show called The Full Wax, which was it was all right, but it wasn't brilliant. And then our guest pulled out the evangelist Tammy Faye Baker, and Ruby said, what are we going to do? And I said, well, we could fly and just film her, and then we could play it into the studio audience. So he said, yeah, I don't care. I'll fly economy. Anyway, I was quite young and inexperienced, so I booked her in economy, and furious. But we flew there, and that's how Ruby Wax Meets came about. And actually, it was far funnier than anything we did in a studio, because it was just out and about, and it was on the streets, and we went, and she made some remarkable shows with Imelda Marcus and O.J. Simpson, and they were just...
Can you talk about our shows now, Clive?
They were just insightful. Well, it's not just all about Sky. But what we thought today is we're going to look at some of the recent content of what Sky's been doing. And so before we start breaking down Funny Factual into its different areas, we're going to look at some of their latest Funny Factual. So, the first rule we've decided is important in making factual funny is the McGuffin, which is something that you bring up in meetings when we have you, and nobody really knows what you're talking about. But because you're the commissioning editor, we all smile. And nod. So what do you mean by the McGuffin?
It is a term I use a lot, because it's sort of The McGuffin effectively is like the coat hanger on which everything else hangs. So it's the thing that can propel action. It's the reason why people go on a journey, and it needs to be authentic. But actually, it's just the device to allow everything else to happen. So with An Idiot Abroad, the McGuffin was that Ricky wanted to test Carl, and so he wanted to send him around the world to educate him. So the McGuffin was that, and that's what propelled Carl. But obviously, what it was really about was all the funny scenarios that we could get him in. And obviously, with Baz and Nancy, the McGuffin is that Nancy wanted to try skydiving, and she wanted to lead an interesting life. But actually, what it really is about is their relationship. So it's the McGuffin is the thing that enables you to do all the fun and funny stuff.
Well, we're going to look at... basically. We're going to look at Baz and Nancy's McGuffin, which Baz sent. That sounds really wrong.
Really rude.
Don't worry. This is it's been reshot, but this is basically what Baz sent into Sky and into Siobhan, and they fell in love with it, and the series got commissioned from them. So let's just see the 50. So Nancy, do you regret saying to Baz that you fancy doing a skydive?
No, absolutely loved it. It was something I've always wanted to do, and it was great. I enjoyed it, every minute of it.
And did you enjoy the rest of the series?
Yes. No, yes, of course I did, yes.
I think it's you know the way you say things like, oh, I want to learn the piano, or I'd like to take up a new language. And I think my mum had said it to me as in, there was a nun in Ireland who'd done a skydive who was 70, and mum said, I'd really like to do that. And I kind of sneered at her a bit about it, and you took a bit of offence about it. And then I thought, well, who am I to tell my mum what she can or can't do? And once I researched it, there was all these people, all these kind of skydive clubs in Ireland were saying, oh, we had a 98-year-old do, we had this person do. And from then, it just kind of snowballed into, well, if we could travel the world together and have this huge adventure. But like the McGuffin, it's just a backdrop really for a story of a mum and son, and something I think most people can relate to. But the comedy comes from those real moments, those revealing moments. But she's a very brave woman, and very inspirational in it as well, so that helps. Yeah.
And Mickey Flanagan, surely he can't have wanted to cycle around France?
No, I think, well, basically, no, he didn't. What Mickey wanted to do was lose weight and live longer and all those things. And he's got a mate who's a brickie and has always been a keen cyclist. So the idea of having a true trip, a true road trip with two buddies trying something, it seemed like a very simple premise to hang something off. And obviously the Tour de France is kind of, it plays to it because it's never the same. So you can change the route and sort of hit all the interesting points as opposed to all the dull towns that the tour really goes through. But it was primarily about Mickey's 51, his mate's 52, and like all people of a certain age, they start thinking, I'm going to fucking die. So what can I do to stop that process? And so he went, oh, let's go for a bike ride. And so then we just went off and did that. But the vast majority of the time, it's just two guys having a laugh. I mean, they just laugh constantly, and it's really infectious because it's a very genuine friendship that you're watching. So you feel a little bit privileged to be part of.
That is key. I mean, the McGuffin has to be authentic, and I think if you just kind of do it in a kind of cynical TV way, it just doesn't work. And I think, and if you do that, that's when you get quite a traditional celebrity travelogue. And I think these, in many ways, are anti-celebrity travelogues because they are real and they have a genuine relationship at the heart, and that's what gives the real tension to them.
Well, what we can reveal to you now is that we cast Nancy.
But actually, it must be said, Mickey really didn't want to do anything. He just wanted to do this. In terms of he wasn't interested in doing a travelogue or a documentary. He actually just wanted to go around France with his mate. So that it wouldn't have happened unless he genuinely wanted it.
Well, that will bring us on to our next rule, which is relationships, chemistry and authenticity. And before we discuss that, we are going to see Mike, like all directors, wants me to say, this is a rough cut, they only started filming it, it's not been graded, and it's not dubbed, and it's probably not the way it's going to look, and the music isn't quite right. But
None of those things.
yes, we've got a little, literally straight back from the shoot last week, a little sneak preview of Mickey and his mate touring France. So, on-screen chemistry. Baz, do you want to talk a little bit about the on-screen chemistry between you and your mum?
At home in Ireland, I've done a lot of kind of comedy travel shows, and the huge advantage of doing a series with my mum Nancy was I know her so well that I know the things that will wind her up. I have an idea of the way she'll react to certain things. So from a comedic point of view, it gives me a lot of leeway. And once our real relationship came out, which is quite revealing, and you've got to be quite open about it. And I remember at the start, we used to, if we were having a real argument, I'd tell the guys to roll on a long lens, and I'd go across the road and we'd shoot it, because as soon as the camera was too close to Mum, she would turn. You know, she's not used to a camera, so she would feel conscious. But as the series went on, she just didn't care. You know, she would just, if she wanted to take me out, she would take me out with the camera right here, and that's what we wanted. We wanted never for it to be fake or produced, or we wanted all the conversations and all the comedy to be natural and real. And I think that there where those real nuggets of real comedy come from, you know.
Yeah, no, and also Nancy, being very well brought up, unlike you, Baz, was very polite. So when we initially asked us how did you enjoy that? She said, oh yes, thank you very much, it was lovely. And then actually, we'd hold the camera, and then we'd all go into acting mode around the lens as if we weren't filming.
Yeah.
Obviously, we didn't fool you for a minute. But then on the long lens, Nancy would go, oh, I did not like that. Anyway.
Yeah, so even the effect it had on the crew, like I say, we'd leave a camera rolling and people would pretend to be doing other things, and then my mum would kind of walk out of shot, and I'd have to come up with excuses to bring her back in. But I think by the end of it, we got some real kind of little magic moments that only come from a real relationship, you know.
Yeah. And what about Carl and the great Mr. Pilkington?
Carl Pilkington, I love Carl Pilkington. He's brilliant. I'm always trying to take him out for lunch and, you know, do the whole talent thing with him. It's like, no, you're all right. I'll have a cup of tea, and that's about it. He's fantastic. So I think when we did An Idiot Abroad, obviously that was about his relationship with Ricky, and now we've done first season of Moaning of Life with him on his own. So it was interesting to kind of make that transition where he didn't have that relationship to kind of build something around. But I think what's interesting about him is that he has such a direct relationship with the audience because he's so honest. And I think that because of that, people really, really trust him. So I think you get the same level of trust that between him and the audience, because he's so open, you know, so open about what he really thinks about people and things that are happening to him. So I think it works on that level. And it was interesting we were a bit nervous about making that transition, but I think he's pulled it off brilliantly.
And how did the Warwick-Davis relationship come about?
Well, that literally was, you saw that recorded, that's pretty much how it happened. You know, it's, you know, Ricky they had that conversation and Ricky had that idea. And we all knew Warwick anyway, and Warwick was really up for it and really wanted to do it. And I think also what was interesting, Warwick was like really intellectually engaged, and he really wanted to learn about, you know, Venice and the history of Venice. And so again, we had this sort of fantastic relationship where Warwick was completely motivated by a whole different set of things that Carl was. And obviously by this time we'd tortured Carl around the world and all sorts of terrible things. So he knew some of the tricks and some of the things that we used to do. So again, we were sort of shadow boxing around trying to make these real things happen in an authentic way. And Warwick was brilliant at that because he had his own agenda, and Carl was forced to kind of interact with that. So it sort of brought out all these relationships, which is genuine, and they fall out with each other. And it's sort of, in a way, over the whole series of that particular series, it was sort of more like a bromance. And we encouraged that storytelling, the rhythm of a bromance, we encouraged that, and we actively sought that out as we made that show. So it's about bringing those other cultural references from movies and from rom-coms and from comedy movies. It's like, how do you understand the structure of those things, and how do you bring that into the real world? It's not easy, but, you know, when you get it right, it's just magic.
And what about Mickey and
Mickey and Noel? No, he was very similar in terms of being a brickie. He was sort of like, you turned up and you kind of go, okay, and we got all these cameras here, and now go on, have a chat, and talk about art or whatever we were covering on those days. And he'd always kind of go, I'm really uncomfortable with it for the first 5 minutes. And you kind of go, well, everyone always is. So you just let that camera roll and roll and roll. And then half the time we would do things, so we went to Rouen Cathedral, which is where they make champagne, and it's an amazing cathedral. It's all Chagall, and Mickey hates art and hates all that kind of stuff. And Noel's a brickie just wandering around going, oh, it's a nice bit of brickwork. And but they sort of like, they skirt around the issue of religion for a bit, which is really nice. But then once we had done that walk around, that was the point I knew kind of, I've got enough of those kind of close-up bits. Now I can go and get all the big, wide, epic shots or do all the long lens stuff and then just tell them to re-walk the route, knowing that's when they'll have their genuine conversation. And that's the stuff where you just fall in love with them. And, and because everything's about, strangely enough, it's a very, I think what we've done is, it's not a very active, strangely enough, because considering they're traveling so many miles, it's not sort of like, I'm going to go and do this stunt or that stunt. It's primarily about two men having a conversation in sort of like extraordinary frameworks. But beyond that, it's you just tune into the conversations. And there's nothing funnier than two men in a chateau with a count and talking about class, and then and how that all drifts off. It was a lovely experience.
It's often the downtime which ends up in it. So normally you do set pieces and you feel the hand of the AP and it's all, and it's actually the stuff that happens in the car on the way to those moments, which is where the really good stuff happens. And you can't predict that. But you do have to enable it. So it's how you can nail the big scenes, but also enable the stuff in between. And quite often, some of my favourite bits is these two guys. Nancy's about to do something, yet again, terrible. And Nancy's just like swinging her legs to stretch. And there's this wonderful scene where they're both just like swinging their legs, stretching. And it's those tiny little details. It's really funny and really intimate. And I think it's the intimacy of those moments that make you feel that you're watching something genuine.
I think that's the hardest thing as a program maker, because you kind of go always thinking, everyone there was a whole spate a few years ago, and it was like, just record everything, we'll be in edit forever, and we'll have GoPros forever, and it's all bollocks. What you really want to do is construct environments where people are comfortable. And once you do that, and just sort of like, oh, now we got that environment, let's just let them be. Just trust talent to be talent. I think that's it. You've signed them on. Don't start putting words in their mouths. It's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, that's certainly the case with, because obviously with double acts, which obviously you two are, and with in a way it's easy because they've got each other to. I think it's easier to be natural because you've got to got two people to banter off each other, and then with Carl and actually with Richard E. Grant in Hotel Secrets, they then have to kind of force themselves to react to the people around them.
With Carl, he often reacts to the directors as well. So I mean, we keep some of that in where it's appropriate, where it's funny, and where we need it. But we do goad him. That's the right word. So I think when Carl is doing his brilliant surreal observations on life, it's often because we've put him in a situation and that stimulates this kind of bizarre take on life. And sometimes he says things which you have to challenge because you kind of go, you can't say that, or really? And so the role of the director sometimes is useful in coming out and challenging him to explain things, and also just to make sure that, some of the things he says are pretty out there. It's kind of like, so we do need to challenge him. So we do have that device. We don't expect him to do it all by himself. It's not a stand-up routine. It's not a performance. It's documentary.
But then also it has to be, doesn't it? You have to, as you say, we were saying, just you have to trust them. So with Richard, he granted himself, if you make him do a piece to camera, although he's an actor, it becomes incredibly wooden. But if you give him a few facts and just sort of unleash him in a hotel, he just...
And make him jump on beds and run around and
Lick
you know,
plates.
lick plates and flush the loos, then it all is a different energy. Somebody once said that he oxygenates the screen, which I thought was such a brilliant term for describing him.
It was really interesting. I remember the very first thing that we shot with Richard on that series. And he came out and he had prepared for it like an actor, and he walked like an actor. And just remember, kind of, we'd had that first meeting with him back in the Burn and Bright office, and he had been so indiscreet and so gloriously catty and bitchy, and was happy to drop the C-bomb left, right, and centre about all the theatre's great and good. And you kind of went, well, where was the man that was in that room? And having to sit to him and say, just don't worry about the facts. Just be you and be indiscreet. And I think sometimes you have to give people permission to do that, especially actors, I think.
Yeah, and also actors sometimes are so used to having direction that they can't... The very first documentary I did with Ross Kemp in Alaska was, I said to Ross, right, we're going to just pick up, it was in a survival shot, just walk around the shop and we'll film you picking out stuff. He literally walked like that. I said, Ross, what are you doing? He said, I don't know, no one's told me what to do. And I said, well, you know how you normally walk down a road? You know, anyway, he'd kill me for saying that. So anyway, talking about Richard's a nice segue onto our next rule, if it's such. It's called Whose Side Are We On? And it's creating, as Mike said, scenes where the viewer and the documentary makers and the talent have to decide where the comedy's coming from and whose side are we on. So we've got a little clip here of Richard about to interview Donald Trump. Donald. So we were given, because obviously we're making series on Hotel Secrets, we wanted to talk to Donald, and we had, how much time were we given?
7 minutes.
7 minutes we were allowed with him. And the team were obsessed that we were going to ask about the hair, Donald's hair, obviously, and then what happened was what you saw. And in the end, that's just funny, because in a way he's sort of, you're not poking fun at him, you're not making a joke at him, he's just doing it for you, basically, you know. And have we done any of that in 50 Ways, do you think?
Have we done? Sorry, explain.
Well, have we set people up in a comedic fashion, or have we?
No, I don't think so. I think most of the stuff that we've done is, like I say again, is fairly natural. Like a lot of the time, Mum wouldn't know about certain scenes that we were going to do, and that gave it a very realistic or natural feel, which could go either way. Sometimes would turn into an argument, or would turn into. But watching a mum and son argue is enjoyable for everyone else but me. Yeah.
I think it's the unexpected, and it's so really the interview with Donald Trump should have been about X, Y, and Z, and we probably had endless negotiations about what we could and couldn't ask, and you only have 7 minutes, and actually the thing that gets in is the thing about him washing his hands and somebody going to the loo, and you know, and that normally probably wouldn't make it into a traditional film or a traditional documentary. So again, it's that sort of downtime and it's that honesty, and also I think it's about having the on-screen talent who have the confidence and the chutzpah and the freedom of an honest relationship to ask those questions that most people daren't ask. And it's about being cheeky and naughty. I mean, Richard's, the king of being cheeky. I mean, I won't say it here because it's really rude, but the first time I ever met him, he asked me an incredibly rude question, which I was kind of like slightly taken aback by, but I just thought this is one of those kind of initiation hurdles. So, I mean, he is like that, and we encourage that kind of, take away the filter. Be honest, be cheeky, ask those questions. And I think that's one of the reasons why your relationship is so good, because you know how to tease your mum. And also we ask Nancy to do all sorts of things that you would never, ever, in any other circumstances, expect somebody like Nancy to do. So it is about pushing the boundaries, I think, and the guts to do that. And if you do that with charm and humour, it is amazing what people will say. And, I don't think Donald would ever admit to that in any other way. So.
And it's also about having a clear, the authors, because they're author documentaries, and having a clear voice, so I'm sure Mickey is fairly...
Yeah, I think it's kind of one of those conversations you always have with somebody before you actually start any kind of filming. You you want to say, look, this is your show. Nobody's watching it because it's Mike Riley or Clive Tuller or Celia's name on it. It's because...
Well, my mum is.
Yeah, but they're watching it because it's the talent's name on there, and you have to allow them to take ownership of that. Because if they have ownership, if they have their genuine voice across it, then they're inherently just going to give you a lot more than
it is a game of trust. It really is a game of trust, and I think you have to, and the trust is what you were talking about earlier. If you trust the talent, you have to be really clear about what you want, but you have to trust them, and they in return, reap the rewards of that because they're allowed to be creative in a way that they can't normally do elsewhere.
And it's trying not to be funny, which is very hard to say to a comedian or a presenter, whoever it is. But like, if you can find the funny in very unfunny situations, that kind of natural comedy is by far the best, I think.
It was interesting with Richard. I remember, because especially when you see the Trump one, all the way through that first block of filming, we were in New York and we were doing all these hotels, and we'd had the discussion about just throw the scripts away, don't worry about that, and just go into rooms and react, and here's the people, and you just ask these questions and we'll be fine. And he was constantly nervous all the way through that first block. And it was after he came back, I remember bringing him into the edit and showing him, look, this is the difference when you don't worry about it. And he got it then, and then he was up and running. And now all you ever do is see Richard just being Richard in that setup.
Well, that's a very good segue into our next rule, which is...
I like to help that side.
which is called Keeping It Real. And we've got a clip from the Moaning of Life. So, Keeping It Real, obviously, did actually get his cock out for those people who haven't seen that?
He took his top off.
Rubbish.
Yeah.
Oh.
And he was really disappointed because he went around afterwards and looked at the drawings, and the men had done quite nice pictures of him, and all the women had done really ugly pictures of them, and he was really depressed that all the girls hadn't drawn him like some hunk. But I mean, it's real. I mean, I think that is the most important thing. So that episode is about work. So in Japan, they have this sort of odd job man agency, and so in any day you can be literally waxing a floor, cleaning a window, and any job. So he spent a day doing that, and so obviously we knew that he was going to do a life drawing class, and we knew that the requirement was for him to take his clothes off. He didn't. So it is about constructing those scenarios, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I think the other thing with the joy of this is that if he walks into something he's not happy about it, the talent understand that the cameras will still keep rolling. So all that dialogue with the director was a proper, real negotiation that happened out in the corridor. And obviously it went on for much, much longer than what we saw there. But in the end, of course, he did do it because he's a brave guy. And I think that's the thing. It does take courage to do these shows because you don't always know what we're going to have in store for you. And I think, as with Carl, as it went on, and I think, Nancy, you experienced this too, but, you'd literally be like, apparently she'd be sort of, stealthily trying to find out what was happening that day. And it'd be like, oh, it's going to be fine, we're just going on a sightseeing trip. And she's like, yeah, but what, are they going to be animals? Or
she'd say,
there's certain days my mum would just go, so today, is it a motion sickness day? Do I need to take my motion sickness tablet? I'd be like, yeah, I think you might. But the thing about it was, there was always that reality. There was always that my mum would, if she didn't want to do something, was just a blatant no and very strong about it. But my
you
job...
said no to everything, Nancy, but
Yeah.
you did so much.
Yeah, but it was always that kind of... My relationship was to nudge, and there's moments you could see she just wants to kill me. But then the payoff is after she's done this amazing event, whether it's swimming with sharks or skydiving or whatever it is, they're the inspiring moments.
Yeah, and the critical thing is, this funny factual, it is an observational documentary, with the rules that we're discussing. So, there are no second takes. You either get that stuff or you don't. And if you don't, then you just have to move on. And it's not something you can recreate, which is one of the reasons why we don't always tell the talent exactly what's going to happen, so we can get that genuine reaction. So it is true observational filming.
And then how do you, us program makers, deal with you commissioning editors who like to know everything that's going to happen before we even
Well, we
leave
don't,
the
do we,
office?
Clive? We don't, do we? And I think that's, it's the trust. We don't know. I mean, I know sometimes more than Carl does, but, we roughly know what the stories are, and obviously we shoot more things than will end up in the programme. But we don't know, and I think that's why this for me, that's why this type of programming is so exciting. Because you just have to sometimes close your eyes and just keep your fingers crossed. And if you're lucky, you get magic. But I think, we don't, and you can't control it. And I think that's the significant thing. It is a creative endeavour with an unknown end. And if you try and control it, it just kills it. And also, we try not to be those kind of commissioners. Well, not try. We are not those kind of commissioners to micromanage things. And if we do, I tell everybody off. So,
No, we've said it. You're brilliant.
Say it again.
Sometimes I think as well, though, it's if you've an idea and it's something that you're confident in. I know myself and Siobhan Mulholland we're back and forth for nearly 3 years trying to come up with ideas. But there's something, sometimes people don't know what they want until they see it. And if you believe in something and you can give someone a taste of that, because sometimes in black and white, certain things don't translate. You need to see a relationship or you need to see basic comedy. It doesn't have to be in a glamorous environment, but they just have to get it. And I personally, for me, as soon as Siobhan knew what the relationship was with myself and my mum, and I showed it to her, she's just a clever lady and just got it instantly. She got what I was trying to do, and it was exactly what she was looking for as well. So it's good to bear that in mind as well.
Well, we've got a clip. Are you ready for this, Nancy?
This is worse for my mum than any stunt she's done. Just so you know.
So this is
sitting here
Keeping
in
It
the
Real. Baz and Nancy in Miami. Mothers all over Britain will be thanking you for that.
But that's a scene where, for example, I hadn't spoken to my mum about it. I'd seen my mum do amazing, unbelievable things. And we got to this night out where, in my head, all I wanted her to do was tattoo. Like, mammy tattoos aren't the coolest, but if you spent a night on the town with your 70-year-old mother, had a few cocktails, and then she tattooed me, I thought that would just be the best tattoo I would ever get. And then it just hit a nerve, obviously, and straight away my mum was adamant. I thought the scene was just gone to muck, that it would be useless. But it was mum being strong and mum saying no, and us having that little argument, and then there's another bit after that where we kind of make up. It was much better than I could have imagined. It was that reality, and it's that kind of natural mammy comedy that you get from your mother just telling you no, even though you're 40. And producing it, and she's not doing what you want her to do, But, yeah.
Mickey, did you keep it real and push him too far?
Push him too far. No, I think there's signs of, as you go on, if you're on the road for 5 weeks, I mean, you do these shows, and you're incredibly privileged to make a living traveling around and doing all these things and seeing amazing people and everything. But basically, after 3-4 weeks, everyone's sick to the back teeth of each other, and everyone's tired, and everyone wants to see their kids, and that kind of element of frustration starts to kind of like appear a little bit and everything. But you have to just kind of like go with it. I mean, that's what it is. And so it's quite nice then to hear them kind of going, I just want to go home. I'm done. And you just kind of go, that's fine. That's great. Just do that. That's absolutely. There wasn't that much in the way of thing. I mean, we did. We climbed Mont Ventoux. I don't know if anybody knows what Mont Ventoux is. It's a giant climb in the Tour de France, and it's a big sort of like rite of passage for any cyclist. And Mickey's mate he's like a uber keen amateur, and he's very kind of nerdy about it and everything, but it was a giant deal to him to do it. And it was so frankly obvious Mickey was never going to make it up there in any shape or form. By that point he had already put on quite a bit of weight, because there was a lot of food and booze along the way getting there. And so it was kind of like, and so we got there, and it was you just kind of went, well, look, the story really will be about if no one can get up there. And there's so many ways you can play that out, and you can kind of go, we'll make this big and epic, and we kind of did. But I mean, it's hard to say because it obviously hasn't been cut yet, and it hasn't been graded, and blah, blah, blah. But we did this thing where we took them up the day before to show them the route, and the weather was shite. It was worse than shite. You could literally only see about 3-4 feet in front of you when you were up at the top. You couldn't see the monument to where the Simpson had died cycling up there. So, you know, and you were up there and you kind of go, oh my God, when he's never going to make it up there. I don't even know if we'll make it back down. It was so dense. And then, so you had this lovely lead up to it. And then the next day, the sun comes out and Noel sort of like starts his attempt to get up the top. And then when he kind of gets there, I'm not going to give the game away, but he does get there. And but when he gets there, and Mickey, there was one point we'd got Mickey an electric bike. And so as he's kind of like he's done about 20k up the hill, and he's like, and Mickey just sort of goes past him on an electric bike. He's just like, see you at the top, mate, and it's all that kind of stuff. And it's all great. But it's kind of one of those things that inherently, and when you think about it, you kind of go, and then he's going to get to the top, and it will crack open a bottle of champagne, and Noel will cry and said, you made all my dreams come true, Mickey, and none of it happened, which was great, because it was absolutely, it was like, oh, he was really happy, but he was freezing cold, and we all wanted to get off the mountain. But later on, we went down to a vineyard where previous winners have planted a vine in their name, and we had got him a slot where his name's up on the board, and he's planted next to Eddie Merckx. And Mickey, and we always acknowledge, look, this is a process. Let's not pretend that there's no cameras here or anything like that. Mickey sort of like did this great thing about going, everybody expects drama and tears and thing. Well, this is that one time. And Noel was still like, yeah, thanks, mate, thanks. But there's a spot where you just see him turn, and he looks up at the mountain, and you kind of go, that's it. Because you know everything's there. You don't need those tears, the falseness or anything like that. But it's really sweet, and it's
Cut
really
to the edit,
funny.
and Cedar's going, is that all you got?
Yeah. Can he cry
Where's the
by
real
now?
action? Come on.
But
Fuck's sake.
it's. I think every time you plan these things out, and on paper you think, and that's the big crescendo where we'll finish there. And every time you kind of, when you're doing it, you're going, oh no, every show actually finishes quietly. It's just two men talking, and that's exactly as it should be.
I should push them a bit harder. Yeah, no, I think, and also the other thing to remember is that when you're doing these shows, is that actually the on-screen talent in the end sort of controls what happens, and that you can push them so hard, and actually, or you can ask them to do things, but if they don't want to do it, and if they don't find it funny, you know, trying to make Billy Connolly do anything that Billy Connolly doesn't want to do is impossible. You know, and he will just go monosyllabic, or he would. I mean, I did a show once where it was the last show I did with Ruby after quite a long 8 years, and it was called Ruby Wax Meets Don King, and she was trying to interview him, and Don just would not speak to her at all, and so we were following him around in Vegas at this expo, and eventually he sat down at a table, and we'd prepared all these questions, and every time Ruby spoke, he just wouldn't talk to her. So I started asking all the questions we prepared, and he answered all the questions he prepared. And Ruby's like, what are we going to do? And I said, because this was literally my last day filming with her, I said, well, we can just redo the questions. So I said, but if you could just, so for the edit, because I'm not in the edit, because obviously this is my last day with you, if you could just look down the lens and say, redoing Clive's questions. And then she went, redoing Clive's questions. I said, oh, sorry, once more. I was like really bullying her. I said, once more, redoing Clive's questions, redoing. Anyway, she did them so badly, you could never use them in the edit. It was like a child, and at the end, she met Don, and it was all fine. But it was an example of actually you can't make them.
You can't make the talent do something they don't want to do.
And
Now-
and actually, to be fair, sometimes the talent's right.
Yeah.
You think, oh, I'm right, I'm so right, and you're so wrong. But in actual fact, you kind of go. We were doing Route 66 with Billy, and so we turned up to Chicken Shack, and it was meant to be thousands upon thousands of people there every Friday night, and we rocked up. And there was no one there. And we had spent all day driving there, and Billy's in really fucking cantankerous mood. And then he's going, where's the fucking chickens? Where's that? And it was just, well, maybe we'll just do this and do that. And he just went, no. And you kind of went, well, actually, he's right. Because it does. It just looks stupid. So let's just pack up and move on. And it was absolutely the right thing to do. So, you know, that's not to say they're always right, though.
Yeah. So
Most of the time.
Most of the time. So one of our last rules is what could possibly go wrong. So you, as a producer, you've got your authors, your talent. You've put everything in place. You know some of the scenes that are going to happen, and what happened next, which is in our Morocco episode of 50 Ways to Kill Your Mammy, was quite shocking. And also what we decided as the production company is that we didn't tell Celia or Siobhan until they actually watched it in the edit.
I mean, I will. I'll
And they
save
were-
my reaction till afterwards.
Yeah.
But.
So let's have a little look at this.
Yeah. He cut her up really badly in Tesco's. You didn't see that earlier on. No, what happened there is that's the Intercontinental Rally, which is a race that goes from the tip of Spain, 5,000k, down to Senegal. And we were doing stage 3, which is the old Paris-Dakar stage. And we were just going for a run-through. But this guy had already finished his stage and was just kind of mickeying around on a dune.
Yeah, it was his fault.
And to be honest, he was coming up one side and Mum was coming up the other side. And it was actually nobody's fault. And he popped up. And funnily enough, he said, he went, that's nice. And I was sarcastic. I didn't think Germans were sarcastic. But in the moment, there was a moment where I thought, oh my God, I've just got my mum to kill someone. and then as soon as he popped up and was like kind of bitching a moment, understandably, there was that, half of me was just thinking, oh God, I hope Mum's all right. And then the production side of me thought, oh, good telly. Are the GoPros running? Did everyone get that? You know, but it is a scary situation to be in. I know my mum was pretty shocked. And what amazed me more than anything is, we'll call him the German. My mum and the German the next day had a chat. And when I thought my mum would just give up and not continue the race. And you were looking at coordinates. Badly, in the truck the next day, and it was just ready to go. You know, just it kind of, you realise it wasn't your fault, it wasn't his fault. It was just one of those things that happens in one of these races, and it's a real race, and it's a dangerous place to be. You know.
And what was your reaction?
I nearly flipping died when I saw that for the first time. I was literally like, oh my God, call compliance, Siobhan! Huzzah! And then I was like, oh, hang on a minute. So I just carried on watching and I was like, oh, he's alive. Okay, fine. Yeah. Calm down. But actually, I mean, I loved it in a way because it was, you know, it was a proper surprise. And I think there's not many times you get a proper surprise. Now, I'm not advocating that everybody does that, all right? It's like, you know, it's an exception to the rule. But I think what's funny, and just literally hearing your reaction to that is exactly what we're trying to do. And I think everything you do in Funny Factual is to be counter to what you expect. So we put the dangerous stuff in, we put the difficult stuff, we put the shocking stuff in, we put the things that... And also, I mean, it's fair to be say that quite a lot of these programs are very moving as well. So, yeah, I mean, you know, and you know, Siobhan watched it for the first time too, and we sort of slightly kind of went, oh, why didn't they tell us? But then also kind of appreciated what they were trying to do. And to actually see something as a viewer is fantastic. You know, and anyway, he was safe. And Nancy, I mean, you know, I mean, how was it for you, Nancy?
It was terrifying, really. Just this apparition in front of me. I mean, I was speechless. Really, I was absolutely terrified.
You bounced back very well, though.
Tried.
Yeah. But it's that's the thing.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I suppose once you're doing a show like that, there's always that for me, that was the first time I kind of thought, oh God, what are we doing or what are we making? But it was the worst thing that happened.
Yeah.
And you know, so we survived, and so did he.
Yeah.
Happily.
His bike wasn't too good, though.
His bike wasn't great. Yeah.
But also, some other times I was thinking, Mike, when it, with obviously not is so dramatic as that, but when we'd prepared Richard to interview the Hiltons.
Oh, that.
And we'd given him all the background gossip of the stories, the life story of the Hiltons. And then, well, you can...
Well, so basically, and this is a really good thing to bear in mind, I think, is... Yeah, you hear, oh, keep your powder dry, and basically Richard doesn't, as Celia was saying, he just doesn't have that filter, and so as soon as he meets, he wants to engage in a conversation straight away. So we got access to the Hiltons. It was a really big deal, and we're in the house, and so I kept on banging on, no, it's nothing to do with Paris, don't worry, we don't care about that, it's about the hotels, blah, 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 blah. And then Richard swooped into the room, went up to Mr. Hilton, who had a sort of like his first drink of the day in his hand, and just went, so I understand that let me get this right. Your father was fucking your auntie? Was that right? And it was like literally the first day. And then you could just see him sort of like freezing. And he's going, no, I've got it wrong. He was fucking the daughter, wasn't he? And it was just like, and you're trying to negotiate him out of the room. And it was an appalling interview and everything like that. Because this was the bit where we weren't rolling.
Yeah.
And this was the bit, because you kind of work your way up to all this kind of scenario, and it had taken, this was another one, it had taken fucking forever to negotiate.
Mind your language, Nancy.
Sorry, I'm sorry. It had taken a long time to negotiate, and then after that, because every time I would sort of like say to Richard or to Michelle, one of the producer we work with a lot, just keep Richard out of the room. Keep him out of the room, and otherwise
But it is
it'll
also
kill it.
the price you pay when you give talent the permission to
Yeah.
unleash. It can backfire on you sometimes, can't it?
It can, and so it was only at that point he actually realised, oh yes, every time I meet somebody, I need to save it for the camera. So you're not being rude, you're just saving it for the camera. Just stand in a corner with your head in the wall. I don't care. Just once things are rolling,
It's
that's
so
how
frustrating.
things-
I remember we were doing a scene in Florida wrestling alligators. I'd done a series previously on it. And I was talking to the director and we were talking through the scene. And I look over and my mum was having the most amazing conversation with one of the guys who said, yeah, my mum's dead. I buried her over here beside these alligators. And it was... But we've lost it all because it's not on camera, you know. And so I used to drill Mum just to gag her because she's just a nosy person by nature, and that nosiness, in the most complimentary way as a presenter. But you want to get all those bits on camera, so you're right. You've got to kind of, if you're going to have any conversations, if there's going to be any reality there, you're better off conserving it and then just letting them loose, you know. I hate doing intros into things where you meet the people beforehand. I don't want to meet anyone beforehand. Let it all roll for real if you're knocking on a door or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah, and it's that thing of sort of like, don't worry about the close-up of the hand on the door. No one gives a poot.
Yeah.
Yes, nicely put.
Just
Thank
to
you.
say, when we were filming, the whole crew, I would curse a little bit as well. And if the cameraman said something like, oh, I've missed that fucking shot, immediately would go, apologies, Nancy. If you bring my mum on a shoot, it'll be the best behaved crew you've ever seen. It's quite amazing.
It's true, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Well, apart from when you let your language slip.
Oh,
Yeah.
of course.
Now, so our last, I think almost our penultimate rule is to remember that it's funny factual, and it is factual still. So we've got a little clip from the Moaning of Life and the Freddie Flintoff series. So remember, it's funny factual. What I think, it always seems slightly odd to be discussing funny factual in the Sheffield Documentary Festival with lots of very serious documentary makers around. But when you're doing these funny series, we still have to do all the same research and make sure all our facts are straight and everybody knows what they're talking about. And actually, it's a very good way of bringing across some very important subjects, you know, and actually getting information out there to an audience which may not necessarily, for instance, in that Carl's one on death, which was an amazing show, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, death is clearly, for most people, a taboo subject. So it's very rarely covered on television because outside of, very serious documentaries about terminal illness or things like that.
And our excellent one we did with Billy Connolly.
And
on
your
TV,
excellent one that
but
you did
apart
for
from that.
it's brilliant. You're brilliant too, Clive. And so for Sky to be able to tackle those really difficult subjects, I mean, Carl's always been fascinated with death, and so we were very keen that we could actually do a really difficult, meaty subject that we could, we'd have the confidence to take on something like that, and actually have something to say about death and about how people handle that around the world. And then on top of that, Carl, as you saw, made it incredibly funny. So I think it enables people to relax about the subject and engage with it, but actually getting a huge amount out of it, because we were able to cover all sorts of issues and the way that people relate to death that that you would just never be able to do in a very kind of straight way. So, you know, I think it's a really powerful documentary that happens to be incredibly entertaining at the same time. Not easy to do.
Did you, apart from electric bikes, did Mickey tackle any serious subjects in the new series?
There was a point. So there were times. Yeah, I mean, we were in Ypres, and obviously it's the 100th anniversary of World War One, and so you have and fundamentally you can kind of go in, the horror and the absolute tragedy and the everything that was wrong with it. But, talked to Mickey about it beforehand. We were very clear that was not the line that we were going to say. It's about finding a personal take on any of these things. So, and we've all seen the images of the rows upon rows upon rows of graves. And then, so what we ended up doing was, we did two things actually, but we took them into one of the graveyards, and where there was there's a grave of a boy who's 15 and had lied to get to the front line, and you get these kids that he was from Essex, and you get these kids that turn up on the bus and sort of lay their poppies down and in front of it, and it would be very easy in these kind of things to kind of go, now's the moment to really turn it on and talk quietly like this and really go for it. But what they do is Mickey and Noel just have a very straight up conversation about, I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I could go to war. And that's the take you go with it. Likewise, we went to in Provence where Van Gogh recovered after chopping his ear off, and it's still a mental health institute where they do art therapy, and Mickey and Noel turned up and sort of did a therapy art class with all these ladies in there. And what was brilliant, I mean, I've made a very sort of like animate point. And this is actually something I learned working with Billy. You just don't patronize. Don't do what Comic Relief does is great, but it's not what we do. We kind of go into a place and treat everybody the same, and you can't patronize and go, oh, bless you, bless you. So they went in, they had a laugh, everybody responded to Mickey and Noel, and then you get these lovely ladies coming up and giving critiques of Mickey and Noel's attempts of art, and it's fabulous, and it's lovely, and it's warm. But I think, and this is a bit like how to make the best of when things go wrong as well. When we did Route 66, there was a tornado struck St. Louis, and the next day, I remember we went out. I went off to look at the site, and I remember phoning up Nikki, who's Clive's colleague, and sort of saying, "Oh God, Billy's this is awful." It's like, I mean, it was like the place had been bombed, and saying, "No, we'll never get anything. Billy will not do it." And I think Nikki had said to Billy, "Oh, Mike's saying it's not very good down there. There's nothing to see." And Billy kind of took that as a challenge. And he went down there, and he drove in, and he met all these people that were picking up the debris from their lives, and he was beautiful with them, and he was warm, and he was charming, and he got this amazing story out of people, and that's when you kind of go, that said far more, because it became about people's resilience in that place. It wasn't about the tragedy of their house is blown away. You actually finished with a woman saying, "Yeah, I'm going to get insurance, and then my mum's going to be able to make the house that she always wanted." And you just see all these people building up. It was fabulous.
That is critical. I mean, we don't set out just to do gag shows, and it is really important that all these funny factual actually does have depth, and it does have a philosophy, and it has something to say. So although, Nancy, we put you through all these terrible things, but actually there's something really moving about watching the love between a mother and her son that talks to us all. And also, I think, Nancy, you probably want to talk a bit about this, but, there's really interesting issues about ageism and what you're capable of. I mean, Nancy, you speak so well about the whole age process and how you feel about that. I mean, and I think it's about having that to say. I mean, you should tell us what you think, Nancy.
Yeah. Well, I don't think age should come into it. If you feel you're healthy and that, it's not your age, really, is it, Des?
No. I think, personally, I think comedy is a great tool for getting across certain facts. It's like spoon feeding a baby. Like you can go straight for it with a heavy factual show where they just go, "I don't want to know about Berber culture or ageism," or they don't want it. But with a bit of comedy, it's easily digestible. And the thing that comes across with what my mum has done is that, and it's how this whole thing began, was about ageism. It was about it being treated a certain way. I was in an airport with my mum, and I booked emergency exit seats. And this is after my mum had done a list of about 37 of the most amazing things you can do in the world. And the woman behind the desk looked over at mum and went, "How old is she?" And I went, "Well, she's right there. You can ask her yourself." And it was just a certain way of treating people, And I think what Mum's done throughout the series, through comedy or through giving me an ear bashing or doing whatever, is let people know that ageism it's a real issue, and it's not something that you should just treat someone. You don't get old, you just get older. I think in a way,
No, it's it turned out to be a much more empowering series than we ever thought when we set off to make it. It's become, we showed it last week at Kilkenny, and it's actually very emotional. It's funny, but also very emotional. There's a lot of pathos, and you're brilliant in it. Now, so we've got a few more minutes, so we might, if we've got any questions from the audience to any of us, or not. And then we've got a final clip of Nancy throwing herself out of a plane at 18,000 feet.
Should we do that while people think of questions, do you think?
Okay. Shall we see, we have a quick clip of Nancy's, have you got a question? Okay, there we go.
Thank you very much. What do you think the chances of Carl Pilkington working internationally were when you commissioned those series? Because obviously it's huge in science in the US. Did you think it could work over there, or?
To be honest with you, if I spent my life thinking about what will work internationally first and foremost, it would probably make me make very different decisions. So I didn't really think about that at the time. I mean, I suppose we knew Ricky had a global appeal, and we knew that Ricky was very, very successful in America, obviously through all his shows, but also through The Office. So in terms of America, I understood that there was potential, but we very much looked at it as our programme for our audience first and foremost. I mean, it's just fantastic when these shows do travel, and I think they do, because although they might appear to be very British and with very British talent, I think because exactly what we were talking about before, because they're about something and they're funny, they actually have an amazing ability to travel to all sorts of territories. And, and that's really what we want. We want these shows to be big, returnable brands that can go on. They're not sort of just quick gag hit shows. We really develop them and build them and want to make them a long-running, sustainable strategy. So yeah, internationally, it's sort of is what we want for them, absolutely.
Another question at the back.
Hello, Nancy, congratulations. I
Thank you.
absolutely love the clips. Really looking forward to seeing the series. It looks fantastic. I want to know what your next series is, please.
So do we.
I'll just have to wait and see. No, yeah.
So we've trained her well.
Thank you.
Archie.
Thanks a lot. It's a really funny session and really interesting session in terms of those rules. Is there a rule or are there rules for the locations and the partnerships and the institutions and the environments you're in, and how straight are you about the fact that you're being funny, and that because I imagine that can be quite tricky, and I wondered for advice as to how much you fess up to the various scenarios that. It's a factual show, but it's a funny factual show, and I wondered what collateral damage there is sometimes.
Well, each show is different, I think, in that with Baz and Nancy's show, it was everyone was having such a good time that actually there was no problem, and we weren't laughing at people.
I mean, it goes back to whose side. I mean, Chris Wilson always talks about this. Is that what's the comedy target? And the comedy target very rarely is the people that we're visiting or spending time with. The comedy target usually is the talent or the presenters or the relationships. So you tend not to, we're not behaving in order to get them to be funny or to take the mick out of them. So actually it doesn't really happen very often. I think that's because it's still honest to its documentary traditions, that we don't set them up at all. But obviously they know that we've got unusual characters coming who might have an unusual different take, and not everybody expects a 70-year-old to turn up and catch alligators or ride ostriches or what have you. So there's a sort of an element of amusement in the way that we're approaching things. But there's no subterfuge and there's no attempt to kind of, in fact, in many ways, the straighter, it's like a true double act. The straighter the doc people are, the better in many ways. And if they start playing up to the camera, start trying to be funny, it doesn't work.
I think that's the advantage as well as of doing kind of a funny factual, is that you've a palette. It's you can go into a scene and it'll either be moving, sad, funny. It gives you a lot of different options for a scene to go. But as long as you know the contributors or the talent or whoever it is, you're pretty sure you'll get one of those three out of the scene, you know.
It was pretty hard with hotels.
Yeah, in Japan.
Hotels was a nightmare. Vegas was really bad. And that entire first series, you kind of, you sort of like say, look, the hotels are going to look amazing. They're going to look lovely. It'll look better than any of your brochures and all this kind of stuff. And they're always kind of reticent, and you're constantly negotiating with PR people, especially in the States. We really came up against it. And I know that in Japan it happened again, but
In Japan, they had no idea what was going on. I mean, it was really difficult. Wasn't
yeah, but then what you found though was that went back for the second series, and we were in Miami, New Orleans, and by that point they'd seen the first series. So then you actually had the general managers of these hotels going, is this going to be the bit when Richard jumps in the bed? And then they all wanted him to do it, you know? So you kind of, because sometimes you're dealing, and this sounds really patronizing, it's not meant to be. It's really not meant to be. But I've still got a chip about it. But sometimes you're dealing with PR people who really don't know good PR. And you kind of turn to them and you sort of like say, I get what you're saying, but you've got to trust me on this, and this is going to make you look great, and I'm not going to jeopardize your career for a second because this is a TV show. It's not worth doing that for. You have to go along with it, and it will pay out. But and then sometimes it's really helpful just to be able to kind of like say, look, you can check on IMDb, you can see all the people involved in it, you can see the kind of stuff that they've done. We're not here to do that kind of stitch up. So you just, but when you're doing first runs of things, it's a really tricky negotiation sometimes. That was pretty hard. To put it mildly.
But we have also done a bit of stitch up in our years, haven't we?
Well, I know, it's always fun to do a little bit.
Now, so we're going to have, very quickly, Baz and Nancy, when can we expect to see 50?
End of the summer on Sky One. End of the summer.
And Mickey, when is that?
I think it's towards the end of autumn, sort of like, winter season.
And have we got, is there going to be any more Carl?
Probably. Oh, Luke is going to kill me, but our press officer. I'm sure there will be. Is that the right answer?
Yeah. So that's a yes. And
I didn't say that, though.
Hotel Secrets is on, Series 2 is on Sky Atlantic from beginning of August, I think.
Yes,
so
fantastic series.
So we're going to end the session with Nancy's thing that started it all, the skydive. So here's the moment that her dream came true. So thank you very much for coming. I want to thank Chris Wilson, who produced the session and put all the clips together and was ace. So thanks to Mike Riley, Celia Taylor, Baz, and to Nancy, who's this is her first ever festival, and I think has found it more terrifying than doing everything else.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.